this has just been an emotional trauma for everyone dealing with the coronavirus. What is normal to be feeling right now?
It's very normal to have emotions. We all do as human beings, ranging from anxiety, nervousness, or feeling frustrated or sad or scared. These are all normal human emotions.
Yeah. So that's just it. I mean, it feels like everything just is changing so fast. What can we do to deal with it?
Right. Well, we haven't encountered this kind of uncertainty before. So when it's new and it's a significant change, this feeds on our anxiety. When we interpret uncertainty, we often go to worrying about the worst case scenario.
How do we avoid doing that? I mean, what can we do, under these circumstances?
Right. Well, we can't really avoid it, but we can change a little bit. With uncertainty, we feel like we don't have any control. So what we need to do is sort of focus on what we do have control on, right? So instead of checking the news 24/7, which can just feed our anxiety and worry, we can decide how many times a day and how long and what news sources, such as the CDC, for example. So those are
finding reliable sources. How important is it to make sure you're finding reliable sources?
That's a good question. Well, we follow our news, right? And we see, for example, what our doctors tell us, what the WHO and the CDC tell us. And I think it's important that we don't have such a large quantity because that can feed our worry.
So limit the number of times you're really checking in on
Yes.
all of this stuff.
Yes.
It's important to be updated, but not
Not flooded by it, because then that's going to create our thinking about it all the time, especially when we start feeling physical symptoms of anxiety, like our heart beating fast or breathing heavier or feeling dizzy. That might be part of our fight or flight response that can actually make us more anxious and worry. So we need to sort of work on stopping it in its tracks and trying to do some relaxation or exercise, other things to get our mind off of it for a short while.
Yeah, what do you do if you start having those physical symptoms?
Well, I think it's important for people to kind of get back to the basics, like how they breathe, try to slow down their breathing, maybe in a nice relaxed chair if they're able to do that, and if their doctor says that's okay. Also having some visualizations, guided imagery, thinking of something calming. Sometimes talking with a trusted friend and having that dialogue can be very powerful to kind of get us more centered.
I'm even seeing people angry, just because why is this happening kind of angry.
Right. Now, some people's anxiety does come out as irritability, so that can be a sign of anxiety for some of us. But again, when we're feeling that nervousness, we want to gear it towards something. And sometimes anger actually can feel better than worry.
So let yourself be angry?
Well, I think if we can turn it towards something positive, such as exercise or getting into a positive talk with friends, going for a walk, talking about a book, trying to get our mind off of the virus all the time.
Yeah, so with everything closing down, we are just becoming more and more isolated. Social distancing, that can have an impact on people.
It sure can, because it's frightening and we're not used to it. And it's such a big change. We have to acknowledge that, yes, this is making us anxious right now, that all we can really do is use the right precautions. That we want to be educated, we don't want to avoid that, but we want to get the facts and cope with it the best that we can. We're all in this together.
Yeah. So even though you're home alone or home with just a few people, we should be staying in touch. Is that actually a good coping mechanism?
Yes, I believe so. It's nice that we have like video chatting. People can use Zoom, for example, so they can, even if lectures are canceled, they can often find a webinar. And this can be really helpful for the older generations as well. For example, if they can't go to their church or synagogue, they may have a group that they can do over the internet, or even checking in with a friend can be really helpful.
Use technology to stay in touch.
That's right. We might as well use the benefits that we have
Right.
in our society right now.
And helping others, I've heard, can be a way to channel your frustration a little bit because that tends to help you feel better?
That's absolutely right. If you can do a good deed for someone that might need help, like somebody, an elderly person, bringing them groceries or something like that, that can be really helpful to focus our thinking on something short term that can make us feel our emotional well-being better.
Yeah. What about, okay, I mean, we talk about the everyday anxiety of just having to be isolated and deal with it, but there are major lifetime, once in a lifetime events just being out and out canceled or delayed. You can't have your wedding after you've been planning for a year. You went to college for 4 years and your commencement ceremony now canceled. So all of those big events that have ceremonial closure to them, boom, gone.
Right. I mean, it's okay to feel those emotions because that is such a letdown, right? A big change. But we don't really have a choice but to reframe it a little bit in looking at catastrophes. We can reach out to, there are a lot of people doing a lot of good right now and offering their services a later amount of time, or airlines that are letting people reschedule at a later date. So we have no choice but to accept what's going on and try to take the generosity of others and us doing our part in helping others through this time.
Yeah, so if you are the one whose graduation is canceled or wedding is canceled, how do you deal with it?
I think that that's a tough situation, but we have to look at it like it's a short-term problem as much as we're disappointed by it in helping our society. I think not being disappointed wouldn't be realistic and not being sad about it. But in the larger scope of things, that's something that we may have to cope with and understand.
Just have to deal with it and understand that it will pass eventually.
Sometimes it's helpful to talk to someone else, that maybe a loved one, relative that's been through something really tough, like a grandparent, and getting their history of what they went through, whether it's coming to America or going through a real financial hardship, because they often have the history and being wise about those things and really explaining to us what they've gone through, but we're able to cope.
Right, right. As far as on the other side, if we are the loved one or friend of someone going through something big like that, where we're all stressed out, but they're really stressed out, what can we do to help them?
Well, we can explain to them that we understand. Empathy, right, goes a long way, really validating their emotions and what they're going through, but letting them know that we're there for them, and that really goes a long way. Also, we can't underestimate that people really feel better when they're listened to.
Yeah, that helps. It's more frustrating when you feel like nobody's listening.
That's right.
Yeah, for sure. Are there any other concrete tips that you can offer, just coping mechanisms for all of us?
I think that when I look at anxiety, I look at the thoughts that we're thinking. If our mind is going to a worst case scenario, if we're predicting catastrophes, and we also underestimate our ability to cope, right? So those are two things that we have to keep in check, and we also have to relax our bodies. So in order to relax our mind, we have to relax our bodies. So that's where I'm talking about the breathing or the positive imagery or going for a walk in nature, things that we still can do. Or journaling. We may try something different during the day that we haven't done with the solitary time.